Hello everyone, welcome to my YouTube, welcome to my new subscribers and welcome to my regulars. I hope you're all well. I hope you're keeping well in this heat. Phew, it's been hot, hasn't it? Oh, can't believe the temperatures. And even today, when the temperature's supposed to have reduced a little, it's still so humid. So if you can hear a noise in the background, that's because I had to give in and I've had to have a fan just while I record the video because it's just a little bit too hot for this redhead. So I'm going to do another very simple video, nothing too complicated at all. So I'm going to use one of my new releases, and what I've got is I've got a piece of pink frog smooth card that's 4.5 inches by 6.5 inches, and I've added a piece of low tack tape which you can see here, and I've just added it so there's a little tiny border around the edge, just a little tiny one, and I've just done that by eye. Don't stress too much, just do it by eye. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to just create something quite simple, especially in this heat. So I'm going to use my gel press, and as you can see, it's beautifully clean. She says, coughing. It's not beautifully clean at all, as you can see. I just used the gel plate as it is, so I've not cleaned it. It's very well used. There's a little hair on there just to add to the fact that Tracy's got 2 black pugs. Right, what I'm going to do is, I've used the Uncharted Marina a couple of times now, and I thought, well, let's have a look at it in a different way. We've done some sort of inky backgrounds with it, so I thought what I'd do is I'd use the Uncharted Marina and the salvaged patina together on the gel press. And what I've got is I've got another piece of card 4.5 inches by 6.5 inches, because I thought if there's any ink remaining on my brayer, which is a speedball brayer, if there's any ink remaining, I can just brayer that off on the excess card, on the excess ink on the white card. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with my salvage patina, and obviously you would have your ink pad down flat on the work surface, but so that you can see a little bit better, I'm just going to hold that ink pad in my hand just so that you can see exactly what I'm doing. And I'm just taking my brayer and making sure there's a good layer of ink on the brayer, and I've just done it across the centre of the brayer really. I've not really bothered towards the edges because I don't really need to use the edges. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to brayer that ink over my gel press. Now if you haven't got a brayer, I've done this many times before, if you haven't got a brayer, use a piece of cut and dry foam or an ink blending tool and dab the ink onto the gel press. So you can do it that way as well, whichever way you feel more comfortable with, or whatever tools that you've got. So I'm just brayering that ink over, and you can see now the ink, because I've gone over the brayer, it's spread the full length of the brayer. And what I'm going to do is just take off that excess ink. Now look at the ink that I've got on that brayer. So there's still plenty of ink left on that brayer. Now you're using the Distress Oxide, a pigment dye fusion, which means there's an opaque element, and also those inks stay wet quite a long time, so there's still plenty of ink left on that brayer. What I'm going to do then is I'm going to go to my Uncharted Marina, just holding it up again just so that you can see, and I'm just rolling the brayer across the ink pad just to get a good even layer of ink just on that brayer, and you can see that's a very rich colour. So I'm just going to lightly brayer just over, and then I'm just going to take the excess just off there, and as you can see there's quite a bit of ink on there. Can you see? There's a heck of a lot of ink on there that you can put on this card. that we could also create another background with. So loads of ink on there. And then what I'm going to do is go to the Salvage Patina. Now make sure that you have got rid of that Uncharted Marina, so that you just haven't got loads of ink on there. And then I'll just brayer off the excess. We can do something with that background. So here we've got card that's got a very flat background. We can do something with that. So what I'm going to do then is, let's just give my brayer a wipe, just so I can show you how much oxide is still left on that brayer. Look how much ink is still left on that brayer. But because my card is saturated with ink, so I could do another piece of card and brayer this off. But I wanted to show you how much ink is still remaining on the brayer, because that oxide stays wet. Right, what I'm going to do then, just use my, so I'm just going to take my gel press, place it over my card so that that card stays clean. And what I'm going to do, you can put this water into a container if you wish. I'm just going to add this water to an acrylic block because I haven't got a container with me. So I'm just spritzing some water, as you can see, on my acrylic block. Well, you probably can't see. And I'm just going to pick up some of that water just with my fan brush. And what I'm going to do is just splatter some of that ink just over the gel press. Just splatter that over, and make sure you get some of those fine splatters as well, not just heavy splatters. Make sure you get some of those fine splatters as well. Okay, and what we can do is, we've got this background here, so take some of that water and just splatter some of that just on your background of the one that you created while with just brayering off your ink. So just, and the good thing about the gel press, even with the fan on, because I've got a fan on and it is blowing quite a lot, this ink stays nice and wet, which is what I like. And I don't have to, what I also like is I don't have to worry about rushing the whole process. So what I'm going to do is just press my gel press just on there. Now normally I would lift the card up, because turn it over and rub it over from the back. I'm not going to do that this time because it's got the low tack tape on there, so I'm not going to do that this time because I've got that secured down on my non-stick craft sheet. So I'm just going to be surprised with what I get by just pressing it this way and not pressing it from the back of the card. So just press that. And if you leave it on there just for a few moments, it just means that ink makes good contact with the card, and the ink and the water absorb into the card. And then what we can do is we can just lift our gel press. So if I just try and pick this up, try and pick this card up, just so you can have a look. Just pick that up off the non-stick craft sheet, just so you can see the kind of background that you get. Now, the less that you press this, you know, you won't have such deeper areas. You can press it lighter if you wish. It's entirely up to you. And then you've got the background where it's just brayered. Let me just lift these up, which is just brayered with ink, and I've spritzed the card, which looks totally different to this one that is done on the gel press. So it's always nice just to see how it's affected each time. So what we can do now is we can take our, do I want to add anything? What I'm going to do is I'm just going to leave that in place just in case I want to stamp anything around the edges. We'll just see about that. Now what I thought would be nice is actually, we may have some ink on here. Let's have a look. Let's not just get too quick with, let's just see if there's any more ink on the gel press, and let's just give that a spritz with water, just using my spritzer bottle, and just see if there's any ink on the gel press, because if there isn't, it doesn't matter. I'm not losing anything, but I can just see if there's any ink on there as a 3rd generation print. And what you've got is a very watery background as well from the gel press. So I've probably got 3 backgrounds. You probably could do it again, to be honest, and get a 4th print off there as well. I don't think that's a very useful wipe because it's almost dry. So just give that a wipe off there. Let's move that gel press just over there. So what we've got is, we've got several backgrounds now, so we can just let them dry. And what I was thinking, my new stamp set, let's just move this out of the way, which is called Elegant Stems. I think any of those flowers would look beautiful on there, but I'm just wondering whether this one here would be the best one. So let's just move that out the way, and then what we can do is we can bring in our piece of card and we can take our stamp off the acetate, and what we can do, let's just turn it the right way, we can see that if we add that, that's going to look quite a nice stamp on there with colour. So I think we'll use that stamp because we haven't used that one in our projects, so let's just use that in our projects. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stamp it onto the background, but then I'm going to stamp again so that I can colour it. So let's just take our stamp, really good size stamp set that we've got, and I just check my ink pads. As you can see, my VersaFine Claire have got, I put the date on the back of mine just so that I know when I started using it, and I use mine so frequently, so I like to know the dates. And what I do is I keep the other ones that are not as inky for something like the kissing technique, or maybe for your sentiments, sometimes if you want them a bit lighter. So I often do that. So I'm just giving this stamp a really good inking, and just take your time. Now this is still moist in some ways because we added that water, and I've not used a heat tool to dry that ink because I just wanted it to keep reacting with the water. So what I also do is sometimes I leave this ink pad up when I'm working upside down like this, just so that, you know, it sort of brings all the ink to the top of the ink pad and extends the life of the ink pad. So what I can decide now is exactly where I want them, and I think I want it here. I never have it, I don't usually have it bang in the centre. That's just a personal choice. So what I'm going to do, you've got all that oxide on there, and the oxide, because there's that layer of oxide in there, your card is no longer porous because you've got a barrier already before the actual card itself. So therefore we may need to blot our ink. What I also like to do is we all ink and stamp in different ways, but what I like to do is I like to allow the ink to just soak into the card, just let it rest on there just a few seconds, and I keep one hand in place. And what I can do is I can lift my AALLandCreate acrylic blocks like so from both angles, just so that it gets this central area here, and then I can just curl it like so, and I get a beautiful image. I'm just going to lift that up. Now if you wanted to, you could literally just bleach this out. So let me just show you what I mean. Let's see if I've got the right. There we go. Let's get a little bit of kitchen towel. So just so that you can get different techniques. If you wanted to, you could add a bit of water here onto your acrylic block. Take your water, it worked particularly well on this background. And what you can do is you can take your water and actually paint with the water, and then use your kitchen roll and dab just to remove some of that ink. And what you end up doing is you end up bleaching out the actual ink from your card. So let me just show you. You make the petals lighter. So this is the one that has been bleached out, and it would work particularly well on this background, which we might do in another video. I might come back and do something with that one. So what I want to do, I want to add a pop of red to mine. So let's just move these out of the way, just in the way at the moment. So what I want to do is grab some Bristol Smooth card. I like to use my Bristol Smooth card. I'm hoping this is Bristol Smooth, put it that way. So I'm going to use my Bristol Smooth card, and all I want to do is just ink up the actual flowers. I'm just going to ink those up just on that Bristol Smooth card. And it's nice sometimes just doing something that's not overly complicated but still looks effective. So hopefully we should have those. Yes, we have. We've got those flowers. Just place that on there. Let's just grab a piece of copy paper. And what we're going to do is bring in these two pieces, and let's just blot those inks. So just give those a blot. And we've got no black ink on there, so that's nice. So we know that everything's fine. We're not going to smudge those inks. And I still haven't taken this off yet because I'm undecided yet whether I'm going to add something. So what I'm going to do now is grab my Ecoline pens, and let's have a look at some of them, those reds. What have we got? We've got scarlet, and let's add a little bit of, what's that, reddish brown, mahogany. So we'll add, let's see if we can add them. So I'm just going to grab the water brush, and I'm bound to grab the wrong one because I normally do. Just wipe up this little bit of ink here. What I'm going to do is just work on this small acrylic block. Let me just bend that. That's the third background we did. And then what I'm going to do is just spritz the acrylic block with my water. And if for instance, like me, you're not sure what card you've got, whether you've got your Bristol Smooth, just do a couple of areas first and just test that out. Yes, that's moving nicely, which tells me it's probably the Bristol Smooth, because that's moving quite nicely. So it tells me that I've probably got the right card. So that's okay, wonderful. So I'm starting with the Scarlet, just adding a touch of the Scarlet, and I like to start with just one flower. I don't know why I keep putting the lid on. I like to start with one flower, just because, you know, I can move the ink in plenty of time, work on that one flower, and then finish that one flower, and then work on the others afterwards. So I'm just leaving a little bit of the white just to give a light area, and I'm just going to use this darker colour, which the Ecoline is saying is like a reddish brown, just to give a little bit of that darkness just to the centre of the flower. Now for me, that hasn't got enough depth, so what I'm going to do is just take that Scarlet again, pick that up, and I'm going to add a little bit more depth of that colour, just so it's a little bit brighter. Make sure my brush is wet. Just going to add a little bit more of that colour. So I often take my time when I'm colouring. It's not something that I rush. And if you've just got a few lines, and just water those out if you've got a few lines, and then give that flower a rest and go to the next flower, which we are going to cut these out. So just go to the next flower. And just blend that out. Blend the colour out, and again we can go back and add more depth, and we can go back with the reddish brown and just add some of that darker area, and we can continue to add a little bit of the darker area when we come back as well, just to give it a little bit more depth. It's nice if you can give the card a little bit of a rest, so that you don't just... So at the moment I've got these two flowers, and I'm just going to continue with this first layer of sort of colour, because what I'm going to do is I'm sort of going to cut round this flower as a whole rather than individual flowers. So I'm just sort of adding that first, you know, layer of colour. And if you've got the right card, it does blend out rather nicely. But this is what I sort of call the wash of colour. It's your first layer of colour, and I call it, it's quite flat. So this is how I would do it at home. I would then go to the next one and add the flat layer of colour. And then I would blend that one out. And normally I'd do all of them at the same stage first. So I'd do it so that they were all blended out at this stage, just so that we've got that first layer of colour on. And then what I would do then is go to each one and add my darker layer of colour. I would add that darker layer. Just to give it a little bit more depth. And then I would water that out again. Just water that colour out again on each of the petals, just so that that's watered out. And then on each of them, I'd then use my scarlet, and I would come in, and that's where I would add a little bit more depth of colour, maybe a little bit at the edges. And just add a little bit more of that depth of colour. But it is good if you can actually let the card rest a little bit. So I'm just leaving a little white area, not too much of a white area. But I do like to go over a few times, and I do like to come back with the darker colour. And while the card is still moist, I do like to add a little few areas of that darker colour, especially on this one. I can really see. There we go. So just use that. What colour am I using? Which is the reddish brown, just to give a little bit more dark. And in real life, when you add the darker touches, you can really see it in real life. It might not be quite as visible when you're looking at it through the camera. So what I tend to do is I'll go back to the red and I'll just add another layer of that colour, just to give even more brightness, just to my card, just so that it just pick up that moisture again, just blend. Now normally before I would cut out, to be honest, I would let this dry. You know, I'd go and have a cup of tea and I would let it dry. And also I would let the card rest once I'd cut it out, take a look at it again and see if I want to add even more colour. That's just me personally. So what I'm going to do now is cut this down so you've got a smaller piece of card. Move that out of the way. I always like to work with a smaller piece of card. I do find that it hinders me if my card is if I've got too much card to cut out. Right. And because I've got less card to handle, I find it a lot easier to cut that out, because I can turn the card quite easily because I haven't got too much bulk of card in my hand. And I'm just turning the card rather than my scissors to dictate the cutting. And what I'm doing is I'm leaving a small area, just a white touch, just at the tips of the flowers, just so that I've got a little bit of white, just so that it'll pop a little bit more against our blue background. It'll just help it to pop a little bit more against that blue background. Let's just those out. And when you've got a darker background, it's amazing what a difference it will make if you just leave a little touch of white, whether it's in your background, whether it's around your flower, whether it's adding a pop of white with your sentiment, white splatters. It does help to add some life to your design. Now this card, because it's moist, you know, and it's not my usual 350 GSM card, because it's Bristol Smooth, which is about 250, you can really feel that moisture in the card. So if, like me, you're a little impatient and you're cutting out, just be aware of that. Sometimes that can work to your advantage. Sometimes if you want a flower to be crumpled, this works quite well if you've got a thinner card. If you want to crumple a flower and then uncrumple it, just to give it that texture. There we go. So we've got that beautiful flower on there, and the red really pops. But if you wanted to, you could crumple that up and you can bend it. It's so easy to bend. So I can add life to it by bending little areas, because the card is a little bit softer. So that red just pops nicely against that background. I feel it works really nicely. Now what we can do is we can take, let's make sure that our brush is clean. Let's just get rid of some of that red. And what we can do is we can take our Uncharted Marina, which you can tell I can hardly say. We can take some of that Uncharted Marina, pick up some of that colour, and if we want, we can add a little bit more darkness just around where the flower, where our cutout is going to go. We can add a little bit more darkness just to make it a little darker around. Let me just lift this up a bit so you can see. Just add a little bit more darkness just around the flowers, so that when I add my cutout piece, it really pops. It doesn't get rid of your background that you've done before, because you're just adding a very subtle touch just to the flowers, just so that it's got a darker edge, and it will just pop when you add that cutout piece. So just add this all around, just where the flowers are. And then pick up that water that you've got left and just blend that out. Just blend it out a little bit, just so that you've got no harsh lines, even though by the time you put the cutout on, you won't be able to see it anyway. But just blend out some of those harsh lines. There we go. And it's a little bit darker just around that flower. I personally think these little touches are definitely are definitely worth it. I can't pick this up. Let's give that. So what we're going to do is we're going to add this here like so. Now I'm just deciding whether I want to add, let me just grab my A7 box. Got my little A7 box of stamps here, and there's just some stamps that I just want to check. Not that one. Ah, that one. So I want to use this one. Let's leave that down there. So this is why I haven't stuck anything down and I haven't lifted up the tape yet. Let's move all this out the way so you can see what I'm doing. So we've got this vine stamp set here, and what I'm thinking is we can just add a few little vines just around the edges of the actual area. So we can take little touches, and because we've got that low tack tape on, it really helps because we can just add these little touches of that vine just to the edges, just here and there. You can actually just add it here and there. Just to give some of that vine just around that outer edge of the card. And what's good is if you've missed little bits, you can just go back and add a little bit more of the vine. It's really easy and forgiving. So just to add, I've just put my finger on that ink pad. Just add a little bit more, which, you know, you can use different areas of the stamp. You can move the stamp around just so that it looks a bit different every time you stamp it. And it looks nothing much at the moment until you add that pop of red. There we go. So let's just put the lid on the ink pad. Let's move that stamp out of the way. So at the moment it all looks one colour until we place that red on. Let me just make sure that my hands are nice and clean. We're going to pull this tape off now, and I always forget which piece went first and which piece went last. I've got plenty of ink all over my finger. There we go. And let's just put that in the bin. And then just make sure you tidy your area up so that you've got none of those black bits of ink, which I seem to have everywhere. Now what you can see, when you look at this now, I can see where the lighter colour is on there, and it's here as well, and I can see some of the lighter areas here. So once you add that red flower, it just makes a huge difference to your project. So what I'm going to do is decide on my sentiments. Let's go back to the stamp set. So on that one I've got elegant stems. What have I got on the others? So let's just place this, let's place this one back. See if I can get this in the right place. I never get it quite right on the acetate, but there you go. I'm getting good at placing my stamp sets back again. There we go. And then we've got plenty of sentiments on the Power of the Word stamp set. So there's just, I love all the sentiments, different sizes as well, just wonderful. The bottom one says anything is possible. It's just that the barcode is over it, so it does say anything is possible. So you see there's a smaller one here that says chase your dreams, which I think I'm going to use, so that'll be quite nice. Now in my previous project I actually embossed these on white card. I embossed these on black card in white embossing powder. I don't want to do that this time, so it's this one down here that I want. Just going to add that to this remnant of card. I'm not even using an acrylic block. There we go. Just love these sentiments. They're so easy to cut out, and I love that they, you know, they look brilliant when they're embossed on black card. They look absolutely lovely. So let's cut that out. But you could have these already cut out and put them in a container already done, and then you can just reach for them like little stickers each time you want a sentiment. There we go. So you see that would go, I think I'm going to have to cut a bit closer because that's going to drive me mad. Just being a bit particular. There we go. So I'm just going to just take my Posca pen and just add a bit more of that black line, just because it's just, I would just cut it slightly off. So what I'm thinking is these can go here, like so. That pop of white, it just stands out. So let me just, I do love how those work. And then you've got a little, this miniatures set, which is the miniatures set here, and it's got some lovely little miniature little beetles and creatures and hares, so it works quite well. So if you wanted to, you could put your sentiment down and add these two hares here. What do I want? Yeah, just there. So let's see what they look like. So I'm just going to line up where around about I want my sentiment. I'm not going to stick the sentiment down, because if you go and make a mistake, you know, if you want to correct it or sort it out, if it's stuck down, you can't do that. So I'm just inking up those little hairs like so, and then I can bring it down a little bit more if I wish. just add, so I can add the hairs first, so I can just allow them to rest on there, just to give the ink time just to soak into that card. So just give it a bit of time, and it doesn't need too much pressure, you just need to allow it to soak in there. And I've got my two little hair, oh I love them, oh I can see these are going to appear on a few things. So now I can stick my sentiment down and I can stick my flowers down. But what I want to do is I want to grab some white cotton, which the only problem is I can never find the end of the cotton. I don't know whether this is a used one or I've started it off or not. Might be this one I've started off, yes it is. There we go, it's this one I've started off. There we go. So just grab some of that white cotton, which will also make things pop as well. So this is just normal cotton thread that I'm using. And I'm just going to spread that out just around the flower, like so. Just take my Pinflair glue gel and just add my flower. Just add a couple of dollops, and the Pinflair glue gel will just grab the cotton as well. Just make sure you've got those flowers, and because it's a little bit darker around those flowers, in real life it looks wonderful. Just make sure, there we go. Right, let's now add our sentiment, which says chase your dreams. Just place that under the hairs. There we go. Let's grab our white pen and just add a little bit of touches of white just to the hairs, just so that we can see those. Let's add our white splatters to our card. Let's just keep our finger here so that we don't obliterate the hairs with the splatters. There we go. And then we want our little grey Inktense pencil, just so we can add a little bit of the shading underneath, just to make that pop a little bit more. Blend that out. Okay. So we've just added that at the bottom of the sentiment, just so that you can see that that actually stands out. And in real life, because it's a little bit darker around the flower, it really stands out. So what I'm going to do is add that to a black mat, which is 1/4 of an inch bigger. I always think when you add it to a black mat and then you add it to a card blank, it really does come to life. I often lift my card up just to make sure that we've got that sort of in line. And also you can go back and you can add some more colour to your flowers if you wish. So we can add this to a 5" by 7" card blank. Again, because you've got that card blank, really does pop against it. And then when we were stamping our sentiment, we've got these numbers on the sentiment, as on the actual sentiment stamp. It's got all those sentiments, the what's it called, power of the word. It's got sort of these numbers as well, so we can sort of, it can sort of act a bit like washi tape. Let's just, and it's up to you how many numbers you use. I haven't decided yet, so hence I'm just cutting the whole thing out. So I think we'll go up to there. Okay, so then I can just add some numbers here just at the top, or you can even add just some numbers just so that it's got the balance. So you can add it here, but it brings more balance there. So before we do that, let's just add some of that black edging with my Posca pen, just so that it's got that black edging back in. I'm just going to add this here. It just brings balance to this here. Once that's grabbed hold, we will add a little bit of shading. You still could even add, you know, your little sentiment, your little numbers that you've got left, even at the top here if you wished. So what I'm going to do is just add a little bit more that grey Inktense pencil just under there, just so that that pops as well. There we go. I think that's enough actually. Let's just add a little bit of water. Just to blend that out. There we go. So if we just lift that up, that is your card finished. You've got your two, oh, I'm going to be using them hairs all the time. I love that sentiment, chase your dreams, and I love the pop of red against the blue background and the little sort of bit of a white border here as well. So I hope you like that. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I shall see you all soon. Love to all. Bye for now.